15 minutes. We can do it. Shortest episode ever.
All right, this week. No.
That's that's not how we start the show.
Here we go.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, yes, it is America's talk radio show about opera. It's called Opera Box Score. I'm George Cederquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, although he's not visible, and Weston Williams. All right, this week, a personal hero of the OBS's own. OC is inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to give you a few hints. He's one of his generation's pioneering Rossini singers. He's from Queens. And Sir George Schulte once told him that he has Mozart and Verdi in his throat. Keep listening if you haven't already figured that out. And 2-minute drill. Hey, COVID is over in Atlanta. So now you are free to move to Georgia and vote in their gubernatorial election. Hey, if you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to that podcast. Get the full show. Stitcher, Spotify, you click follow. Apple Podcasts, just hit the plus sign. It's that easy. You can also send us a voice memo from your phone or email us your hot takes. operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get that beer coaster and that OBS lapel pin. Oliver Camacho, there he is. Look at that.
So speaking
of
feedback from our listeners, we did get some feedback from one of our favorite listeners, Kenny. I hear you, Kenny. But I just want to say I was listening last week because I wasn't on the show, and so many times like, no, wrong, no. So that's my feedback, you guys. No. Wrong again. No.
I guess we'll keep that one between Oliver and Kenny. I'm still trying to think of that fifth handle opera, by the way. I'm just stuck.
You've had time.
Weston Williams, how are you?
I mean, I just sitting pretty with my knowledge of exactly 6 handle operas, just ready to go at any time.
How dare you, Dan? Cubs baseball has started. They managed to get into a bench-clearing brawl in the second game of the season.
Nice.
I think that's a record, probably, that was against the hated Milwaukee Brewers. All right, let us talk some opera.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is OBS Hall of Famer, our enthusiastic yet humble salute to a distinguished opera artist who has gone above and beyond to contribute greatly, distinctively, and with grand significance to the art and honor of opera.
Well, I got Matt to join me for this special Hall of Fame because we're going to talk about the rise of the Rossini tenor. And
a repertoire that's very near and dear to both of our hearts, I know.
Yes, and in so doing, we are inducting one of my personal heroes, Frank Lepardo, American tenor Frank Lepardo, into the OBS Hall of Fame. And for those of you kids out there, you know that meme where it's like, the first part of the meme is, the mother says, you have so-and-so at home. And then there's like the second half of the movie is like, and that's a picture of what the so-and-so is, but like all janky.
Yeah. Or like deconstructed.
Right. So, your pre-90s Rossini tenor is not the same thing as the Rossini tenors we now have that just seem to pop up out of nowhere. But obviously the great Rossini tenors of the moment are Rene Barbara and Juan Diego Flores and
Javier Camarena and friend of the show Larry Brownlee, of course.
Friend of the show Larry Brownlee. But before that, let's just take it back to pre-1980s. The people who you would find singing in Rossini operas are what were lovingly considered to be tenore di grazie, the tenors of grace. And they were singers, mostly Italian, some Australian and English, who had the sweetness in their tone to sing a Rossini cantilena.
Literally get the notes out, you mean? Usually. Most of the notes out, most of the time.
When it came to the cabaletta part, more often than not, the solution was just to cut the cappelletta up so that they only had to sing a couple phrases. In some more difficult roles, about high-lying Rossini roles, the solution would be just cut the aria altogether. But, in an opera like Barber of Seville, you can't really cut Count Almaviva's first aria. You can cut the second one, but you can't cut the first one. So
until recently, most people did cut the second one.
Yeah. This is what I had like when I was coming up, if I wanted to listen to Rossini. But then, because I'm like the perfect age to have seen this happen, we get a tenor like Rockwell Blake, who I forget what the marketing used to be on him, but like that he could sing 64 notes per second or something like that. Like there was some weird thing that was attached to him, the fastest tenor around. And he definitely had the speed in his voice and a virile American sound. I think if anything, American voices can be known for, American male voices, is just like that athleticism. Mm-hmm. Maybe if not graceful, there's always we're the jocks, of the opera world.
It can get a little unwieldy, but in terms of like the tone quality and the vowels in particular, but the excitement is always there.
Yeah,
and the rhythm is always there.
Purity of vowel will never be Rockwell Blake's.
But you are never ever gonna have to compromise on speed with Rockwell Blake. Yeah, or like the ridiculous phrasing choices that he can make.
If you have never heard Rockwell Blake, why don't you go out there and listen to some Rockwell Blake? There's plenty of him out there, and it's actually very exciting. Like he was, I think, the first person I heard sing that Terra Amica from Zelmira, which has a really fun hook in it. And he
has a high D in the main theme of the aria, which means you have to sing it 17 times.
Yeah, and another tenor who came up in the 80s. And whose principal career was in the late 80s and early 90s, was the Mexican tenor Francisco Araiza, who had a little bit more of a bel canto tone. Maybe didn't sing as fast as Rockwell Blake, but he could articulate, and he tended to put a tiny little glottal stroke in his Rossini, so that you could hear some of those faster notes. Mm-hmm. I think of him as more of a Mozart tenor than I think of him as a Rossini tenor.
But he's on a lot of those recordings from the mid-90s. Like he's on all of those recordings with Neville Mariner when they're just trying to get a little bit fleeter, a little bit more historically informed, but without throwing the baby out.
Yeah, well, his Cenerentola with Agnes Balsa.
I love that recording.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then comes around this guy named Frank Lepardo, who grew up in Queens and was studying at Juilliard, and apparently didn't come from a lot of affluence, and used to, take long walks and long train rides to get to school. And from what I understand, I talked to him actually for my show last week on WFMT. He was a bit of a rebel, tattoos and really heavily worked out, stacked and long hair, leather jacket type of guy. And he didn't really fit the mold of a Juilliard student at the time. And it turns out that Juilliard thought the exact same thing, and they relieved him of his scholarship, and he had to discontinue his studies. That's a nice way to put it. He had to discontinue his studies.
Yes, you'll never work in this town again.
At Juilliard. But maybe that was the thing that gave him an edge, because he found his own teacher, a guy named Dr. Robert White, and Dr. White taught him how to really develop his falsetto, and also encouraged him to take it easy on the weights. When Frank Lepardo was a student, he had listened to a lot of Richard Tucker, was his favorite tenor. And he had this sort of muscular quality in his voice that his teacher tried to dissuade him from. And go, explore his falsetto. Mm-hmm. And I think his professional debut was singing Fenton, but he discovered that he could sing coloratura, and
there's nothing like that in Fenton, which that's all very high and floaty.
Right, it's like Nanetta, but you're a man,
And then you have to pop out a really huge B flat at the end of your aria,
and you don't get any applause because it goes right into
into a duet.
Yeah. So he learned how to sing Barber Seville, and he began to get contracts for that. But he also, I believe, was heard by Claudio Abbado. I forget when, he told me when, but Claudio Abbado heard him sing and invited him to participate in a Vienna production of L'Italiana in Algeri, which was a vehicle at the time for the great Agnes Balza. And also in the cast were Ruggero Raimondi as Mustafa and Enzo Dara as, is it Ali? Is that the name of the character?
Mm-hmm.
So a...
he's probably the tutor, Enzo Dara.
Taddeo.
Yeah.
Okay. So a deluxe Italian / one Greek cast of people who have been
very spicy Greek.
Yeah, who have been doing this repertoire their whole lives, and this one American, Frank Lopardo. And Frank told me that when they had their first musical rehearsal, he was in this tiny room, a room that was too small for all of these people to be sitting in. And, Italiana basically is an overture followed by the first aria of Lindoro. So he was the first person to get up and really have to sing in front of this.
There's like a little silly trio right before it, but nothing as memorable
Elvira
as...
and whatever, so the first big sing is Frank Lopardo's Languire per una bella. And he was nervous as F, and he did it, and he said he probably oversang it because he was like trying to
how could you possibly oversing? So those of you who have never tried to, have you ever tried to learn that aria? Have you tried?
Yeah, I know. Actually, I can sing it with lots of breaks in between.
Exactly. It is relentless. Speaking of high notes, and I one time counted, there are 27 B flats in the cabaletta of that aria, because it is again in the main theme, and it is just relentless. And you get to the last page and you have to do a run for 3 systems, and then you do it again, and then you go up to the top and come back down, and go up to the top and come back down, and go up to the top and come back down, just like a tightrope walk for 6 minutes. But it's amazing.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Fast and Furious today on the OBS. Good call, bad call. We're going to take you home. Oliver Camacho.
I would be remiss if I did not promote or help promote the debut recording, solo recording of one of our favorite friends of the show. Rachel Willis Sorensen's solo album just came out last week. And unlike other artists who record these kind of rite of passage solo albums, this is actually repertoire which she sings, repertoire she sung on stage. So it feels much more lived in, much more detailed, much more coached, for lack of a better word. I don't know how many recordings I've listened to of sopranos with glamorous voices who you can tell they just cracked open the score to record those arias. Rachel sounds incredible, and it also features some moments of duet moments with Jonas Kaufmann. He's a pretty good singer. And
you might have heard of him.
Yeah, and actually Olivia Kaler, mezzo-soprano, makes an appearance on this recording, and she has a relationship to Opera Box Score. I'll just leave it there. So a really wonderful thing all around. Please check it out.
Weston Williams.
My good call is the fact that here in Chicago, winter is finally breaking. Spring is upon us. I wore short sleeves outside today for the first time in what seems like 30, 40 years. I looked out at the lake. The ice floes were cracking away. The polar bears were going into hibernation for the summer. It was truly a wondrous sight to behold.
Can you make it about opera or sports, please?
The polar bears were singing Goethe Dämmerung.
Perfect.
Insane. Good call that the documentary about Michael Fabiano called Crescendo is coming out on Roku. Looking forward to seeing that.
Wasn't that originally on that other platform that died?
Quibi.
Quibi, yeah, Quibi.
Quibi.
Man, he knows how to pick them. The bad call.
Boy.
A couple weeks ago on the show, we talked about this production of Wagner's Rheingold that has 3 directors, one for each of the 3 acts. And I took a look at the production picture for the first act. Oh my lord. I was blind for approximately 45 minutes afterwards.
Oh,
We'll put
wow.
It's very Reggie Theater, isn't it?
we'll put a pic on that on the website. Might even be in the TDO show as
Yeah.
well. Let's wrap it up.
That first one looks like David Hockney's garbage. Like
yeah,
something he threw away.
yeah. It's like
never
the
mind.
Hockney production of Turned Up, but just far, far worse. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Our announcer, he's Norm Woodel. NormWoodel.com is how you find him. Again, if you're watching on Dallas Opera Network, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, get that full show. Stitcher and Spotify, you click follow. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, just hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get some merch, OBS beer coaster and lapel pin. Even Kenny got some from us, and boy, did he deserve it. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For your co-host, Matt Cummings, I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you panic cast a COVID-infested production of Tosca. We're back with an all-new show next week when Sforzando rears its ugly head again. Plus, you get more opera headlines, you get more hot takes, and you get more enzymatically derived sweet white and yellow filling in a chocolate shell. Join us.
Delicious.